Is the economy slowing down? And what will that mean for your career? Well, stick around because in this video, I'm going to share with you some things that you can do to protect yourself in the event of a recession. Hey everybody, it's Brian from A Life After Layoff, and today I want to talk to you about how to protect yourself in the event that we would be heading into a recession. And this is going to be specifically focused on careers because that's the point of this channel, but I wanted to cover what I'm thinking as I look at the economy and what's been going on in the labor market. And I have to admit, it does have me a little bit worried, and I think we should be pragmatic about the state of the economy and where we might be heading. So let's take the steps today to protect ourselves in the event that it does. And if it doesn't, you'll be in a better place regardless. But before we get too far into it, if you're interested in more career-related content just like this, maybe hit that subscribe button. If you've been paying attention to the headlines, you've been probably seeing some more fears about whether or not we're heading into a recession. And of course, those tech layoffs have been well broadcast on both this channel and in the broader news, so it shouldn't come as any surprise. And we're also seeing the increase of a pretty disruptive technology, which has suddenly exploded into the marketplace. Of course, I'm referring to ChatGPT, which has seemingly sprouted overnight and has become an absolute weed that seems to be out of control. And it seems like it's going to affect almost every major industry. And whether you agree or not about how disruptive ChatGPT and its AI brethren will be on the job market, the fact of the matter is that it will be replacing jobs in the near future. And in fact, I think IBM has announced that they're going to be replacing 7,500 workers who have either left by attrition or by layoff with AI. And indeed, if they're the tip of the spear, you can certainly expect that there are a lot of other companies exploring ways to outsource your job using AI. So I'm not trying to be naive about this, and I'm paying close attention to what this means for the labor force. So when you take that and you couple it with the traditional layoffs that we're seeing as the economy might be slowing, the question really becomes, are we facing a recession? And if so, what should we be doing? Well, obviously, the first major thing is you should be acting today and not waiting until tomorrow. I think we have to take a very realistic look at the marketplace and say, what is really going on here, and not ignore it or not put your head in the sand. And this message is not meant to be doom and gloom or fear or any of that kind of stuff. It's really meant to be empowering, because a CEO of a company is looking at the conditions of the market and how they can best take advantage of it. You just look at the IBM CEO who is using this market condition to leverage the ability to move to AI without it raising potentially eyebrows. The fact of the matter is these CEOs are acting like CEOs and making these executive decisions that are in the best interest of themselves and their shareholders. So we as free agents, or the CEO of our own careers, need to be doing the same thing and taking a realistic look at the market, what is happening, and how we can best take advantage of it, or alternatively, how we can protect ourselves, because that's what a true CEO or a true free agent would do. So let's talk through some things that you can be doing today, and in fact, you should be doing today in the event that we are heading into a recession. And even if we're not heading into a recession, these are some things that you might want to hedge your bet on just to be sure. First thing I recommend you do is take a close look at your budget and start looking at areas that you have wasteful spending, because a lot of us have budget creep over the course of a long period of time, and you probably don't realize how much you're spending. And of course, inflation's been through the roof. I mean, try to go to a restaurant anymore and find a hamburger that's under $15. It's absolutely crazy, but you can't do it. And I've looked at menus historically that were from 2 years ago till today, and in some cases, menu items have gone up $4, $5, $6 for the exact same thing, with the portion sizes getting smaller. Of course, if you go into the grocery store, you know the story very well. My own grocery bills have gone up 50% in the last year, and it doesn't really seem like it's slowing down. And I'll be honest with you, it's getting harder and harder to cut the budget these days because of all this inflation. But nonetheless, it's something that I would absolutely try to start doing, and that's the first tip that I would give you. The second thing you want to do, and this is really speaking to folks who are gainfully employed right now, but now's the time to start getting prepared. You want to look at your emergency funds and try to start saving up. In fact, if you're doing the budgeting, you might want to hold off on some of those bigger purchases that you might have had planned, and just make sure that maybe 6 months worth of income would probably look pretty good right now in your bank account. Because if you find yourself on the wrong end of a layoff, you're really going to want that extra money to tide you over. I keep on seeing all of these posts on LinkedIn about people who are saying that they're about to lose their house, they're about to lose their car, dire straits, all this stuff. So that really becomes such a critical component, is have that emergency fund when you have the ability to save up for it. And to take that a step further, your preparation probably shouldn't just stop at an emergency fund. I mean, I might even be looking at some emergency food, etc., just to get you through those tough times. And if we do find ourselves in that type of a situation, it's just nice to know that you've got it. And if you're somebody that's saying, I don't really think this is a big deal, it's not going to affect me, I would actually encourage you to gauge your risk of what your company's health is, what your industry's health is, and whether or not your career is at high risk of being laid off or even worse, outsourced altogether to AI of some sort. I made another video about how some jobs could be replaced by AI, and there was some mixed opinions in there, and I totally understand it. But again, I think we need to be pragmatic about this and look at it from a very realistic lens, because every day that goes by, I'm seeing another use case coming out for AI and its applications. And these companies are looking at this stuff very carefully. And if you're working for a company that isn't in good financial standing right now, maybe they're relying on investor funds, or they haven't pulled a profit, or their profitability is sinking, man, I would be really thinking long and hard about whether or not I want to have an exit strategy, because I'd really want to ask myself the question, how recession-proof do I think my company really is? And maybe even more broadly, how recession-proof is my industry? I would assess the risk and determine whether or not it would be in my best interest to dust off the old resume and really start to be a little bit more aggressive with a job search. If you're working and you're feeling relatively stable, but you may have been somebody that dialed back a little bit on the performance over the last 18 months to 2 years, as we've talked about all these employment trends that have come by, this might be a time for you to evaluate the effort that you're putting in and maybe pick up that performance, because you want to make yourself invaluable. Because when we get into an economy that's more challenging, you can guarantee that the companies you're working for are pulling metrics and you're ending up on a spreadsheet. And if your productivity is lower than the rest of the peer group or whatever bar they've set, and if your name falls below a certain level, you could unfortunately find yourself with your name circled on that spreadsheet, and that's not a place that you want to be. So I would be looking for ways to make myself invaluable and just pick up my performance so that it's above the cuff. The next thing I would do is I would be looking at my networks very carefully, and now's the time to be building your networks, not when you actually need them. Because most people completely neglect their networking, and then when they get laid off or they're in a situation where they need to find a job, they then suddenly go out and start asking everybody in their network whether or not they can help them. And that's really not the best way to do it. And the important thing about networking is it's not necessarily to connect with your neighbor or the person you go to church with, or even potentially the coworker who sits in the cube next to you. The best kind of networks are to find and network with people who are movers and shakers in your industry and people who have jobs that can actually hire you for. And I know that every time I talk about the importance of LinkedIn, there is a certain group of people that are very vocal about how much they despise LinkedIn and they won't do it at all and all this stuff. And the fact of the matter is that you can choose not to do LinkedIn if you don't want to. There's nobody forcing you to do it. However, that's where a majority of the professional level networking is happening. And that's where most companies are finding their talent and recruiting it. So whether you want to be on there or you don't, it's up to you. But if it's me and I'm acting like a free agent, I am certainly getting onto LinkedIn and leveraging my networks as much as I possibly can. And while I'm at it, I'm also looking at the strength of my resume. I am trying to gauge how strong of a candidate I would be compared to all the other people that may be coming into the marketplace at the same time. And I'm trying to make myself the most valuable and attractive candidate possible. So I'm looking at what skills do I gap on and how can I start to fill them? Because now's the time to skill up and make your resume that much stronger. The stronger the resume, the more likely it is that you're going to get into the interview process. And that's something that you should absolutely be focusing on, not necessarily even just when there's a recession possibly coming, but you should be doing this anytime. But in particular, if you see trouble brewing and you have an opportunity to get in front of it, it's a lot easier to do it when you don't need to worry about it than when you're somebody that's unemployed and is scrambling to try to strengthen a resume. And while you're strengthening your resume, you would absolutely want to start learning how to write a great resume that is actually going to get you noticed for those opportunities. It's fine and dandy if you have this resume and you have all these skills, but if you don't know how to write a resume that is going to actually get the recruiter or the hiring authority to notice you over all the other people, then it's going to put you at a disadvantage and it's going to impact your ability to find a job. So I highly encourage you to understand what hiring managers, recruiters, etc. are looking for, and then be able to customize or tailor a resume to it. And speaking of AI, there are some tools that can help you automate the customization of your resume, and you might want to consider leveraging them. However, I would be very careful not to allow an AI to take over the writing of my resume and just sitting back and going, well, everything's done. Because inevitably, the person who knows how to write the resume, that has the strategy behind it is going to have the best chance of getting that job, even as they're competing against the AI-driven resumes. So you want to have the strategy behind it because that's going to give you the most power. And of course, an AI is not going to understand that strategy. And I know some people who are watching this video will probably be considering a career shift. I know there was a lot of people that I've speak with myself who are moving from one job type to another. I think during the last 18 months to 2 years, software engineering became a really hot thing. Everybody was reading about how much money these software engineers were making. So a lot of people started to rebrand themselves as software engineers. And unfortunately, this is a really bad time to be entering into the market as an entry-level software engineer. It's not to say that you can't find a software engineering role, but it's just a very difficult time. It's not like it was 18 months ago as I record this video. Same thing goes for recruiting. It's probably not a great time to get into recruiting if you're trying to do a career shift, and maybe real estate / construction, anything that would be particularly vulnerable to a major slowdown in the economy. So if you're deciding to make a change in your career, I would just take a long, hard look at what you're trying to accomplish and what job types there are, and maybe go back to that risk assessment that we talked about earlier, because you don't want to jump ship to a new type of job only to find out that as you put all this effort in rebranding yourself, that there's no jobs available, that they're being replaced by AI, that there's a lot more competition because so many people have been laid off in that particular job type. Yet at the same time, if I'm in a high-risk job, in other words, I'm in a job that's likely to be outsourced or downsized, then I'd be looking at ways to diversify my skill set, make myself more invaluable, or maybe even looking at a career shift at that point. And to that end, if I'm working on something in my company that I know has a high likelihood of making me obsolete, like a software engineer who is developing some sort of a chat bot or an AI, I would maybe consider choosing a different career path, because I'm not going to actively participate in the outsourcing of my job. Taking that a step further, if I'm working for a company that's actively pursuing technology that will replace their workers, I would be thinking long and hard about getting in front of that curve, because I know that they're going to be looking at my job at some point in the future, even if today I'm okay and I'm safe. So I'd suggest looking for another company or an industry that might be more stable and less susceptible to those types of ebbs and flows in the market. But at the end of the day, we have to act like a free agent. We have to act like the CEO of our career, because we're the only ones looking out for us. That means that you have to ask those hard questions, you have to face a tough reality, and maybe make some tough decisions. Then that's what you probably need to do. But if you need more help doing that, that's actually something that I specialize in. I've got a website called alifeafterlayoff.com. It's loaded with tips and tricks on strategy about how to approach your career. And I share my deepest and most intimate knowledge in the form of some training courses. The first one is called Resume Rocketfuel, and it's designed to teach you how to write your resume in a way that AI can't, because it gives you the strategy behind it, not necessarily just how to write it, but why you want to write it a certain way that you do. And that'll give you a big competitive advantage in the marketplace. So if you're not sure how to approach your resume strategically, I would highly encourage you to check that one out. Also, once you get into the interview process, it's up to you to sell yourself through the entirety of it so that you can get to the finish line and get that offer. And that's where the ultimate Job Seeker Bootcamp comes in. It's the most robust course I have. It's from cradle to grave, A to Z, takes you through each step, gives you all kinds of tips, techniques, and ways that you can strengthen your presence in the interview process so that you ultimately land up with that offer. And we teach you how to negotiate that offer in the strongest possible way so that you don't leave any money on the table. Usually we can get you to pay for that course just through that negotiation technique alone. And if you're trying to build those networks, you want to check out Unlocking LinkedIn, because that course will help you determine the right kinds of people to be connecting with, make you more visible to recruiters, and ultimately try to strengthen your relationships so that you can have a leg up on the competition. It's a lot easier to have a recruiter coming and contacting you than the other way around, especially in a really tight labor market where we need any advantage that we can get. So make sure you check that one out. Appreciate you watching. I wasn't trying to be too doom and gloom in this video, but really trying to be more pragmatic and just take the necessary steps again to act like that free agent. So hopefully you got some value out of this video. Like always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.